People always ask me when I knew my relationship was over. They think it was the moment I found the messages. It wasn't. It was the moment he looked me in the eyes, smiled, kissed my forehead, and said, "I love you." Because only 20 minutes later, I learned he had spent the night telling another woman the exact same words. If someone had told me that the man I trusted most would become the biggest lesson of my life, I would have laughed. Back then, I believed love was enough. I believed loyalty mattered. I believed honesty always found a way. I was wrong. My name is Emma. I'm 30 years old, and until that Friday evening, I thought I had everything figured out. Ryan and I had been together for 4 years. We met at a coffee shop in Chicago. He was funny, confident, and somehow made every ordinary day feel exciting. He remembered little things. How I hated mushrooms. How I always forgot my umbrella. How I cried during animal rescue videos. He made me feel seen. Or at least, that's what I believed. We rented a small apartment together. It wasn't fancy, but it felt like home. We cooked dinner together almost every night. We argued about whose turn it was to wash the dishes. We planned vacations we couldn't afford yet. We even talked about buying a house one day. Every picture on my phone told the same story. A happy couple, a future, a life. Looking back now, those pictures only showed what he wanted everyone else to believe, not what was actually happening. People think betrayal happens all at once. It doesn't. It begins with tiny changes. Changes so small you explain them away. Ryan started working late. Then later. Then even later. Every excuse sounded reasonable. Big project. Important client. Unexpected meeting. Traffic. I never questioned him. Why would I? Trust isn't something you check every day. You either have it, or you don't. Sometimes he'd come home exhausted. Other nights he'd come home strangely energetic. He'd shower immediately, then leave his phone face down on the table. That was new. Ryan had never cared if I used his phone. Now he carried it everywhere. Bathroom. Kitchen. Even taking out the trash. One evening, while we watched a movie, his phone buzzed. He reached for it so quickly that I barely noticed the screen. But I did notice one thing. The notification disappeared before I could read it. He smiled awkwardly. "Just work." I nodded. I wanted to believe him, because believing him was easier than imagining the truth. Weeks passed. Something inside me felt different. Not jealousy, not anger, just unease. Like walking into a room and forgetting why you were there. You know something isn't right. You just can't explain it. One Saturday morning, I suggested we visit my parents. He immediately said no. Too busy. But later that afternoon, he left the apartment wearing his nicest shirt. "I have to meet a client." "On a Saturday?" He laughed. "You know business never sleeps." I smiled. He kissed me, then walked away. I stood by the window longer than I should have, watching his car disappear for the first time in 4 years. I hoped I was overthinking everything. Monday changed my life. Ryan left early for work. He forgot his smartwatch on the kitchen counter. A few hours later, while I worked from home, it vibrated. Normally, I would have ignored it. But the screen lit up automatically. One sentence. That's all it took. "Last night was perfect. I already miss you." My heart stopped. I stared at the tiny screen. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe it was an old message. Maybe my mind searched desperately for another explanation. Then another notification appeared. "Can't wait until she finally finds out." The room felt silent. I couldn't hear the television anymore. I couldn't hear the traffic outside. All I could hear was my own heartbeat. I picked up the watch with shaking hands. There were no names, only previews, but I didn't need names. I knew, deep down. I already knew. For several minutes, I just sat there, completely still. 4 years, 4 birthdays, 4 Christmas mornings, thousands of promises, reduced to 2 text messages. I wanted to scream. Instead, I cried. Not loud, not dramatically, just quiet tears that wouldn't stop. Because the hardest part wasn't realizing he had cheated. The hardest part was realizing he probably thought I would never know, that I would keep loving him while he laughed behind my back. He underestimated one thing, me, and he had no idea that those 2 messages were only the beginning of a truth far bigger than an affair. Over the next few days, I would discover a secret so shocking. It wouldn't just end our relationship. It would destroy the life he had built on lies. I didn't confront Ryan. That surprised even me. Every part of me wanted to throw the smartwatch across the room, pack my things, and disappear before he came home. But another voice inside me whispered something different. If he's lying this easily, what else is he hiding? That question stayed with me all day. When Ryan walked through the front door that evening, he smiled like nothing had happened. "Hey, Em." He kissed my cheek. I forced myself to smile back. "How was work?" "The usual." He started telling me a story about a difficult client. I watched his face carefully, not because I was trying to catch him, because I wanted to know if the man I loved was still somewhere behind that smile. He wasn't. For the first time, I noticed how practiced he had become. Every answer came too quickly. Every laugh felt rehearsed. When he disappeared into the shower, I stood in the kitchen staring at his forgotten coffee mug. I realized something painful. I wasn't grieving the relationship anymore. I was grieving the version of Ryan I thought existed. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m, I heard his phone vibrate. He quietly slipped out of bed and walked into the living room. I waited. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. When he returned, he acted as if nothing had happened. But I noticed something. He had forgotten to close the balcony door. The cool night air drifted into our bedroom. As I closed it, I caught the last few words of a voice message still playing softly on his phone. "I miss you too." My hands trembled. He hadn't even bothered to wear headphones. He simply assumed I would never question him. That assumption would become his biggest mistake. Over the next week, I stopped looking for proof that Ryan was cheating. I already had enough. Instead, I wanted to understand why. One afternoon, while Ryan was at work, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. I almost ignored it. "I'm looking for Emma," a woman said. "This is Emma." There was a long silence. "My name is Claire." I had never heard that name before. "I think we need to talk." My stomach tightened. She asked if we could meet at a quiet cafe the next morning. Something about her voice sounded nervous. Not threatening, not angry, just exhausted. The next day, I arrived early. Claire walked in wearing a gray sweater and carrying a laptop bag. She looked around my age. When our eyes met, neither of us smiled. She sat down slowly. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what?" "For being part of something I didn't understand." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" She took a deep breath. "I've been dating Ryan." The words hit me like ice water. She quickly added, "I didn't know about you." I stared at her. She reached into her purse and placed several printed photos on the table. Vacation pictures, restaurant selfies, birthday celebrations, Ryan, holding her hand. Ryan, looking happier than I'd seen him in months. "I thought we were building a future together," Claire whispered. He told me he lived alone. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, I asked the question that mattered most. "How long?" She looked down. "Almost 2 years. 2 years. For half of our relationship, he had been living 2 completely different lives." I expected to hate Claire. Instead, I felt sorry for her. She had believed the same lies I had. She wasn't my enemy. She was another victim. Claire wasn't finished. "There's something else you need to know." She opened her laptop. "I didn't come here just because of the cheating." She turned the screen toward me. It showed dozens of files, invoices, contracts, emails. "What is all this?" "I work in finance," she explained. "Ryan asked me to help organize paperwork for a business he said he wanted to start." She paused. The numbers didn't make sense. She pointed to several transfers between different accounts. I thought they were mistakes. Then she looked directly at me. They weren't. I felt my heart racing. "What are you saying?" He wasn't just lying about relationships. He was lying about money. Claire explained that Ryan had convinced several friends, relatives, and even coworkers to invest in what he called a can't-miss business opportunity. He promised quick returns, professional plans, safe investments. Some people invested a few $1,000s. Others invested much more. The business barely existed. He wasn't building a company. He was building an image. A successful businessman, a reliable partner, a man everyone admired. The money had mostly gone toward expensive trips, luxury clothes, gifts, and maintaining 2 completely separate lives. I leaned back in my chair. Suddenly, every late meeting, every mysterious weekend, every expensive dinner he claimed was for clients made sense. This wasn't simply about cheating. The affair had only uncovered something much bigger. Claire looked at me carefully. "I've already spoken to an attorney." I blinked. "I don't want revenge," she said. "I want the truth." For the first time since reading those messages, I felt something stronger than heartbreak. Clarity. Ryan had spent years believing he was smarter than everyone around him. He thought lies could last forever. He had no idea. 2 women he had deceived were now sitting across from each other. And neither of us planned to stay silent. People love to imagine revenge as one dramatic moment. A public speech, a shocking confrontation, someone walking away in tears. Real life isn't like that. Real justice takes patience. Claire and I agreed on one rule before we did anything else. No lies, no tricks, no fake evidence. If Ryan's world was going to fall apart, it would happen because of the truth, not because we created a story. For the next 3 weeks, we met every Saturday morning at the same little cafe. At first, it felt strange. This was the woman I thought I should hate. Instead, she became the only person who truly understood what I was going through. We compared timelines. When Ryan told me he was in New York for a business conference, he had actually been in Nashville with Claire. When he claimed he was helping his cousin move, he had been spending the weekend with her family. Every excuse had a matching lie. Every lie had another person caught inside it. One afternoon, Claire looked at me and quietly asked, "Do you know how many people he's lying to?" I wanted to answer, but I couldn't, because I honestly didn't know anymore. As we organized everything, something unexpected happened. The story grew. Claire found emails from people asking Ryan when they would receive updates about their investments. Some sounded patient. Others sounded worried. One message stayed with me. "Ryan, this was my retirement savings. Please tell me everything is okay." I read it 3 times. My chest felt tight. This wasn't just about broken promises in a relationship. People had trusted him with their dreams. Parents, young couples, friends, people who believed in him because he knew exactly what to say. I suddenly remembered all those evenings when Ryan practiced speeches in front of the bathroom mirror. I thought he was preparing for presentations at work. Now I realized he had been practicing how to sound believable. The most painful part wasn't discovering he could lie. It was discovering how talented he had become at making people feel safe. Claire closed her laptop. "We need professional advice." I nodded immediately. This was bigger than us. Neither of us wanted to make emotional decisions. We wanted to do everything the right way. Meanwhile, Ryan had no idea. Or at least, that's what I thought. One evening, he surprised me with flowers, my favorite white lilies. A month earlier, I would have cried from happiness. Now I wondered what he was trying to hide. "You've seemed distant lately," he said. "I just miss us." His voice sounded soft, almost convincing, for one dangerous second. I wanted to believe him. Then I remembered Claire sitting across from me. I remembered those messages. I remembered the people who trusted him. The feeling disappeared. "I'm just tired," I replied. He wrapped his arms around me. "I promise things will get better." The irony almost made me laugh. He was promising honesty while standing on top of years of deception. That night he fell asleep quickly. I stayed awake staring at the ceiling. Not because I still loved him, because I was wondering whether he had ever truly loved anyone, or whether every relationship had simply been another performance. The next morning my phone rang. It was Ryan's older sister, Melissa. She sounded nervous. "Emma, have you talked to Ryan today?" "No, why?" "He borrowed money from our parents 6 months ago." I froze. He said it was temporary. Melissa hesitated. "They're asking questions now, and he keeps changing the story." Another piece of the puzzle. Another family member caught inside his web. I carefully asked a few questions without revealing what I already knew. By the end of the conversation, one thing became painfully clear. Ryan wasn't living one double life. He was living several. Different stories for different people. Different promises. Different versions of himself. He had become so comfortable with dishonesty that he probably couldn't remember which story belonged to whom. When I hung up, I looked at Claire's latest message. "I think we're almost ready." I typed back only 4 words. "Let's finish this carefully." Because this wasn't about humiliating him. It wasn't about shouting. It wasn't about revenge for the sake of revenge. It was about making sure every person who deserved the truth finally received it. And soon, Ryan would discover that the hardest thing about building your life on lies is that the truth only has to appear once. Everything else collapses on its own. The following Tuesday felt strangely calm. Almost too calm. Ryan left for work wearing his usual confident smile. He kissed my forehead and said, "I'll be home early tonight. Maybe we can order your favorite pizza." I smiled politely. "That sounds nice." The door closed behind him. I stood there for a full minute, listening to the silence. Then I picked up my phone. Today was the day. Not because I wanted revenge, because I was tired of watching good people question themselves while one person kept rewriting the truth. Claire arrived first. A few minutes later, the attorney she had contacted joined us. Over the previous weeks, we had carefully organized everything. The timeline, the messages, the financial records, the promises made to different people. The evidence wasn't dramatic. It was simply consistent. Every document supported another. Every conversation matched another date. Every lie connected to the next. The attorney looked through the final folder and nodded. You've both done the right thing by documenting everything instead of confronting him emotionally. Hearing those words gave me an unexpected sense of peace. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't acting out of heartbreak. I was acting out of clarity. That afternoon, several people who had trusted Ryan received the information they had been missing. Not accusations, not insults, just facts. Claire contacted the people connected to the investment records. I quietly reached out to Ryan's family. Each conversation was difficult. Each person reacted differently. Some refused to believe it. Some cried. Some became completely silent. His parents were devastated. His sister apologized to me even though none of this was her fault. I kept repeating the same sentence. I'm not asking anyone to choose sides. I just think everyone deserves the truth. That sentence mattered. Because once people stopped defending the image Ryan had created, they started comparing stories. Suddenly, dates lined up. Excuses repeated themselves. Promises sounded familiar. People realized they hadn't been alone. The picture became impossible to ignore. Truth has a strange power. It doesn't need to shout. It simply waits until enough pieces fit together. Ryan came home later than usual. The confident smile was gone. He looked tired, confused, almost frightened. He placed his keys on the kitchen counter and stared at me. What happened today? I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I slid one folder across the table. He opened it. His face lost its color. He turned another page, then another. Finally, he whispered, "You went through my things?" I looked at him calmly. "That's your first question?" He couldn't meet my eyes. "I can explain." I shook my head. "No. You can tell another story. But you can't explain years of choices." For several minutes, he tried. Different versions. Different excuses. I didn't mean for it to happen. I was going to tell you. I never wanted anyone to get hurt. Every sentence sounded smaller than the one before. Finally, I asked one question. When was the last time you told the complete truth? He opened his mouth, then closed it again. No answer. Because there wasn't one. I stood up, placed my apartment key on the table beside his, and quietly said, "I hope one day you become the person you always pretended to be." Then I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I didn't look back. Some endings don't need noise. They just need one person brave enough to stop believing the lie. A year passed. Life looked completely different. I moved into a smaller apartment across the city. I started volunteering on weekends. I reconnected with friends I had slowly drifted away from during my relationship. Claire and I stayed in touch. Oddly enough, one of the worst experiences of our lives had turned into an unexpected friendship. Healing wasn't quick. Some mornings I still woke up angry. Other days I felt embarrassed that I hadn't seen the signs sooner. But those feelings slowly became less powerful. One afternoon I walked past the same coffee shop where Ryan and I had first met. For a moment I stopped. Not because I missed him. Because I realized something. That place no longer belonged to our memories. It belonged to mine. I smiled, bought myself a coffee, and kept walking. For the first time in a long time. The future felt bigger than the past. People sometimes ask if exposing the truth gave me satisfaction. The honest answer? Not in the way they imagine. Watching someone face the consequences of their own choices isn't exciting. It's sad, because none of it had to happen. Ryan could have chosen honesty. He could have ended our relationship before starting another. He could have admitted his mistakes before they grew into something much larger. Instead, he kept adding one lie on top of another until the entire life he built depended on people never comparing notes. Eventually, they did. If there's one lesson my story taught me, it's this. Trust is built one truth at a time, but it's broken one lie at a time. When someone asks you to ignore your instincts, to excuse every inconsistency, or to accept promises without actions, pay attention. Real love doesn't make you question your worth every day. Real love doesn't survive by hiding. And the strongest revenge isn't cruelty. It's refusing to let someone else's dishonesty define your future. I didn't win because Ryan lost. I won because I finally chose myself. And that decision changed everything.